With how popular theories and speculations have become over the recent years, it's led many of us to go back to some of our favourite kids shows and movies to try and spot something that's not what it seems. Today, we're going to be discussing 10 of these conspiracy theories in kids shows and movies. But I'm not alone today. I'm going to be joined by my good buddy Cora.
Hey guys, I'm CoraTCS, aka Cora. You can find me on Twitch and YouTube. I'm a variety streamer with a love of all things horror. Thank you, Dark, for having me on.
She'll be helping to narrate some of these segments with me. But without further ado, let's get into them.
Garfield is starving. This theory comes mainly from a comic, but because it's so connected to TV, Dark and I decided to include it in this video. This theory suggests that all the characters apart from Garfield are either dead or never existed in the first place. That sounds extremely absurd, like an old creepypasta, but this comic may convince you. Garfield wakes up in an abandoned building. Nobody is around. John isn't there. Neither is Odie. The rundown building and the lack of John and Odie seem to imply that Garfield is just dreaming all the fun shenanigans he gets into in the show and other comics, and what we see here is reality. This one is a little bit crazy compared to some of the other theories, but I think it's a fun one and certainly one you never expected from this lovable tubby cat. And one last thing, maybe Garfield was abandoned on a Monday. That could explain why he hates Mondays so much.
WALL-E betrayed Earth. This one has always stuck with me for the longest. WALL-E is one of my favourite childhood movies, and I always get a little emotional at times when watching it. Like seriously, how can Pixar make a love story between two robots who barely talk to each other so darn appealing? Well, there was something in the movie that when it was pointed out to me, it made me instantly go, whoa! If you guys know the story, WALL-E takes place far in the future, in the year 2805, but the story begins in 2110. Earth in 2110 had become far too polluted due to the rapid consumerism and rapid industrialization thanks to buying large, so humanity chose to live in space as the robots cleaned up the mess while they toured the stars. Yet, fast forward 700 years, the Earth is still a mess, and the last robot running is the WALL-E that we follow throughout the movie. But why? Humanity put a lot of effort into the project, and it was clearly working. Well, one theory suggests that the WALL-E that we follow actually ended up slowly eliminating the other robots one by one over the 700 years. WALL-E is capable of emotion, attachment, and self-preservation. We see a scene in the movie that shows that he would happily steal the parts from his other dead robots to keep himself running. And of course we know all of the love he has for random little trinkets. Maybe WALL-E malfunctioned at some point during his service, and he wanted to keep the junk to himself rather than compacting it like the other robots did. It's a neat theory in my opinion, although it may be a little silly at times. I just find myself really enjoying it. But what do you guys think? Do you think it has any sort of merit? Or do you think it's just a little bit too implausible? Let me know.
The Finding Nemo theory. If you thought Finding Nemo was safe from the theories, you can think again. This theory suggests that Nemo never actually existed in the movie, or if he did exist, he did not survive the Barracuda attack at the start. The film is a metaphor for Marlin's journey through the 5 stages of grief. His denial happens when Nemo is first taken away from him. His anger erupts when he gets mad at Dory for her short-term memory loss when they are trying to look for Nemo. Bargaining happens when he and Dory ask the many sea creatures for help on the way to find Nemo. His depression happens near the end, when he thinks Nemo has perished. His acceptance happens when he reunites with Nemo, which could be a metaphor for him finally letting go of his grief. This certainly puts Finding Nemo into a much different perspective. It's really intriguing to imagine that this story that many people love and enjoy is actually the journey of a grieving father.
The Flintstones is in the future. This is a classic theory, and one that I still believe has merit. The Flintstones and the future sounds like an impossible combination, but hear me out. The Jetsons were a popular sitcom that was also airing around the same time as The Flintstones, and both were very well known at the time, so a crossover between the two shows was basically inevitable. And so it was. In 1987, the official crossover movie, The Jetsons Meet the Flintstones, was born. The plot involves the Jetsons making a machine to try and send themselves to the future, but of course the machine goes wrong, and they are instead transported into the past, where they meet the Flintstones and they get up to all sorts of shenanigans. But there's a theory that implies something a little deeper. Throughout the Flintstones, you can see things like pop cultural references, cars, currencies, and things like airports. But how can that be if the Flintstones were set in the Stone Age? Well, what if it wasn't? What if the Flintstones was set in the future? And this means that the machines that the Jetsons used, it really did work. Remember, the Flintstones aired right during the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis during the Cold War, so threats of nuclear warfare were very high. Maybe in this world, a nuclear war did break out, which ended up reverting all of the humans back to the Stone Age, and maybe they're trying to rebuild what once was. Pretty interesting, don't you think?
Donald Duck has PTSD. This is a theory that Dark firmly believes in. It's no secret that Donald is well known for having a famously short fuse. But why? Well, there are some clues that could give us an answer. Donald is canonically a war veteran. He served in World War II under occupied Germany. The famous cartoon called The Furious Face confirms this, but the biggest clue that could lead to Donald having PTSD is in an old comic. In this comic, Donald's nephews play a prank on Donald by setting off some fireworks to mess with him. Donald shoots away and goes into a PTSD attack when he imagines himself to be back in the battlefield. He directly says, "I'm in a minefield, it's a Japanese ambush." If that isn't a cut and dry confirmation for him having PTSD, I don't know what is. Dark loves this theory, and he thinks this theory makes so much sense because of how Donald acts, and his temper. It helps to paint Donald Duck in a much different light. He has a temper, but it's not fully his fault.
The SpongeBob nuclear testing theory. This theory isn't as ludicrous as some of the other ones mentioned in this video, and it might actually be true as well, according to some of the voice actors. As you may know, Bikini Bottom takes place underneath an island, but what you may not know is that island is based on a real place. It's called Bikini Atoll. The island was very famous for being the site of nuclear testing. Around 67 nuclear tests took place there between 1946 and 1958, and now it's an uninhabitable area that even to this day, it's still not safe to be around or live in. So if the whole island is irradiated, it would make sense that the water would be as well. So what if all of that radiation seeped into the oceans and caused all of the sea creatures down below to gain heightened intelligence? I love this theory so much, and it's awesome to know that the voice actors really like it as well. I'd have loved to have known what Steven Hillenburg thought of this theory if he was still with us. Personally, I do headcanon this one as being real, because it just works.
There are no monsters in Courage the Cowardly Dog. Courage the Cowardly Dog is one of the most loved Cartoon Network shows, for its darker material for a kid's show. But this theory may just change your entire perspective on this whole show. This theory goes that all of the monsters you see in Courage the Cowardly Dog aren't real. Rather, the whole show is from Courage's point of view. Courage lives alone in the middle of nowhere. He clearly doesn't go on walks too often because of his owner's old age, so it's likely he doesn't have much interaction with other people besides his owners. So maybe these scary monsters that Courage sees, maybe they're just normal people like you or I, but warped in the eyes of a scared dog who doesn't know any better. This theory could help explain a lot. All dogs want to do is be loyal to their owners and help where they can. If a dog doesn't understand the situation, it will see it as a potential threat. Really makes the title Courage the Cowardly Dog take a whole new meaning.
Winnie the Pooh and mental health. As a guy who's researched a lot into mental health and neurodivergence, this one hits very close to home. This theory suggests that all of the main characters of Winnie the Pooh all represent one mental health condition or one case of neurodivergence. Let's go through a few of them. Winnie is obsessed with honey and always wants to eat it. This is because he represents an eating disorder. Tigger is an obvious one. He represents ADHD. More specifically, I believe he represents hyperactive ADHD. And for those who don't know, there are actually 3 different kinds of ADHD: inattentive, hyperactive, and combined. And combined is the most common one. He's always bouncing and full of energy. Eeyore is also an obvious one. He represents depression. He's always so sad and gloomy all the time. The owl represents dyslexia. He oftentimes has trouble spelling words properly. And he could also represent narcissistic personality disorder, as he considers himself superior to the others. Piglet represents anxiety, as he's always afraid and nervous. The rabbit represents OCD, due to his odd tendencies and how he has to have things done in a very specific way. And lastly, there's Christopher Robin. He's the only one who can see the characters, and this is because he has schizophrenia. There are other characters who also have a mental health condition which aligns with them, but that's basically the gist of this theory. I really like this one, and it makes you look at all of the characters from the 100 Acre Woods in a completely new way.
Toy Story and the Holocaust. This is a chilling theory, but one that a lot of people believe in. Toy Story 3 is one of the best Pixar films around, and would have wrapped up the Toy Story series perfectly if they didn't want to milk it for all of its worth. But this theory may make you think of this movie in a whole other way. The theory goes that all of the Toy Story 3 is an allegory for the Holocaust. Andy leaving for college at the start of the movie is meant to represent people leaving to fight in the war. Sunnyside Daycare is meant to represent concentration camps where the toys were taken and forced to be played with by the toddlers who weren't gentle with them. By the end, they escape Sunnyside and end up in the dump, where they head towards an incinerator. But they are saved by the Allies, the aliens, right before they perish. The ending then shows the toys reuniting with Bonnie's toys as they begin their new life together, clearly meant to represent the Allies escaping back to their countries. This theory is one of the most popular ones in all of Pixar, and for good reason. It really gets you thinking about what interesting messages that may be hiding in your favorite movies or shows.
The Pixar theory. Even over 10 years after this theory was first thought of, it's still my favourite one. In 2013, John Negroni wrote the Pixar theory. It's a theory which states that every single Pixar movie is connected in some way. They all happen in the same universe, but at different times in history, and it's always being updated as new movies come out, as they all strangely seem to fit into place no matter what. The full theory is very long and is always being updated, so I'll give you a little taste of how it goes, but I highly encourage you to go and check it out in your own time, as it is a very fascinating theory. It begins with the good dinosaur. The asteroid that should have wiped them out missed, therefore splitting the Pixar universe from our own. Humans and dinosaurs actually coexisted for a while, until climate change took them out. Magic exists in the world of Pixar, as shown in Brave. The magic can do all sorts of things, such as create the superheroes that we see in The Incredibles, or even bringing toys to life like in Toy Story. But slowly in the shadows, a company named By and Large, shortened to BNL, would slowly begin to take over the world, starting slowly from making battery packs, to housing and construction, till eventually becoming the largest company in the whole world. The world becomes too polluted by the consumerism and the massive expansion of BNL, causing the humans to move into space and let the robots clean up the world, like they do in WALL-E. They eventually return back to Earth when the pollution has gone down, but soon the radiation would mutate the bugs and the humans that remained on the Earth, leading them to become monsters, like in Monsters University and Monsters Inc. That's a nutshell version of the Pixar theory, as there really is a lot to it, but you get the point. It's an incredible theory that I'd love to see grow and grow as more and more movies are released. But I hope you enjoyed the list. Once again, I want to give a massive thank you to Cora for joining me, Be sure to go and check her out, and I'll link all of her stuff in the description. But for now, I'm your local Mage Dark. She's Cora. I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to become one of my disciples and help me reach my goal of 5,000 subscribers by the end of 2026. But for now, we'll see you guys later. Take care, my disciples.